We all remember recess growing up in school. Recess was a time of day where you could have all the conversations that you could not have while in class. Recess is where you had the real conversations. And real conversations we're going to have. In each episode of the Recess Podcast, I'm going to have real conversations explaining students and school. I'm David McGuire, and I'll be your host. It's recess time, y'all. What's up, everybody? Back like MJ. Excited to be back for episode 42 of the Recess Podcast. It's probably been like a month since I've been on here, and I'm feeling good. I'm excited for this episode. Thanks for everybody that held on and asked me when we were coming back, but we're back now. So thanks for rocking with me. So those that know, you know how this goes. It's the Recess Podcast where we have real education conversations. For those that are new, the Recess Podcast says for real education conversations explaining to students in school. And so we're definitely going to have a real conversation today. This is season 3 kickoff. I got some new energy this season. Those that know, the Recess Podcast, typically we have conversations about Indianapolis. And so season 3, I'm trying to broaden my horizons a little bit. I'm trying to expand more national with the conversations, but it's going to be the same type of show, just real conversations, man, for teachers, for other educators, for parents, for students, for the people. And so I'm excited for this episode. And so again, what I need you to do, like, share this video, subscribe to the YouTube page. But while we do that, check-ins, as always, listen, it's the summertime. We opening back up a little bit, but COVID is still out there. So make sure you protect yourself. But, just how's your summer going? And if you're on vacation, where are you checking in from? If you're going on vacation, where are you going? So pop that in the comments, man. Let me know you're rocking with us, and we're going to dive right in. So I'm going to yield the floor to our guest for a little bit. She's going to introduce herself, tell you who she is, and we're going to dive into the work she's doing and this dope article that she wrote. So, Miss Isis, introduce yourself to the folks on the Recess Podcast.
Good evening, everyone. First, let me say that I just came off of vacation. I just came back from Cabo, Mexico, and man, it was amazing. Got myself a little tan, and everything. But good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Glad to talk about, what I love most, which of course is education and my families. And I am fearfully and wonderfully created. And my job is to plant seeds in the education field, and I may see them bloom in my lifetime, and I may not. So that is who I am. What I do is I work in pre-K through 5th grade education as an elementary school educator. This is my first year being a quote unquote pandemic teacher in my school life and at home. I am a mother to 4 beautiful children, and I am a wife. And again, glad to be here, guys. Oh, and I'll bring you greetings from South Carolina. Sorry, South Carolina.
I was about to say, come on, man. I'm trying to add pins to my Recess Podcast map, right? So I've done Philly, I've done Delaware, I got my South Carolina. I'm adding my pins here. Season 3, man. Look, how people say they stamping their passport?
Right. You stamping your map.
I'm stamping my map, man. I'm stamping my map for my shows. Listen, you said something, man, made me think of Tupac, right? Like when Tupac said, right, I'm not saying I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee you I'll be the spark. And like you said, like I may not see those flowers bloom, but I promise you I'm planting them and planting those seeds, and they're going to grow, man. So that's amazing. So look, we got a little bit about you, but I see the shirt, we see the name. So Fundamentals of Learning. Mm-hmm. What is it? What's it about? What's the work that you're doing with that?
Yeah, so Fundamentals of Learning actually started as a YouTube channel in 2019. So I always heard conversations about parents from teachers. I always heard conversations about parents and families, they don't care, they don't know what's going on, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, all right, let me kill some of this noise. Let me hop on the YouTube bandwagon and just make what I was calling at that time 5 tips in 5 minutes. Like it was real catchy, So I would literally just set my camera up and I would do 5 tips in 5 minutes. And that was Fundamentals of Learning. And together, me and my husband came up with like what I do. And I told him, hey, like I teach the basics. I make it concrete. I make it simple. So he was like, okay, fundamentals. And I was like, but I want the FUN to be capital. because I want them to know that when you see me, it's going to be fun, it's going to be engaging, it's not going to be boring. Like, it's going to be something that families and children actually want to listen to. So it started in 2019 as a YouTube channel. And then, of course, when everything happened with COVID, and then when I had my son, I was like, I really need to take this and I need to make it a business. Like, I need to make it an actual company so that I have something to leave to my children. So in 2019, so January 2019, I started a YouTube channel. May 2019, I actually got my LLC and I started the business component, and I started to do some consulting work, just visiting schools. And then when COVID happened, I decided to apply for a grant so I can actually be one of the leaders of a learning pod here in South Carolina. So it has gone from just being a YouTube channel, doing 5 tips in 5 minutes, to now being an actual business and being an organization that has a pod that's actually helping families. And this year, with the new grant that I received from the Vela Education Fund, I'm actually going to move into some teacher trainings as well.
I love that. So I'm trying to see if I can get. Okay, here we go. I think I got it. So I want to put this on for the people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's it, right? That's the YouTube channel, right?
Yeah,
there.
that's my YouTube channel.
Yep. So
yeah,
man, it's amazing, right? Like, and you were actually you were ahead of the curve on the whole virtual thing, right? Before COVID. So you kind of did this before COVID.
Yeah.
But you saw a lot of this happening, and I know this wasn't original, but how have you seen maybe with COVID happening and people going virtual learning? Did you see an uptick, right, in the page and in the resources where people just like, okay, now I really need this, right? Because like, I'm stuck at the crib, right, and I'm unsure what to do with my child at home.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I used to do is I used to post a video a week just on my YouTube channel. But when the pandemic happened, I would go live every single day. And I would make a post on my page and say, hey, like, if you pre-K through 5th grade, what is your child working on and what do you need? And when they would comment, I would take those comments and I would go live with that comment. So some days I was doing sight words. Some days I was doing multiplying 2-digit by 2-digit numbers. Some days I was doing place value. But it was really asking families and asking friends like, hey, what are y'all struggling with in this elementary space so that I can help you? And then on Fridays, I would do Fun Fridays. These are 5 fun activities that you could do with your child to help them with their sight words or help them with sentences or writing. And I would even bring my own children into my videos because I wanted families to see I'm not just talking this thing, like I'm walking this thing, like I'm teaching my kids at home as well. So that's what I started doing really when the pandemic happened.
Listen, and I bet that seeing your kids, right, show folks the realness of this, right? Like, yes, this is a business, this is passion, but this is my everyday life, right? These are things I'm not telling you something I'm not doing with my own children, right? And that brings that sense of realness. So as a wife, as a mother, as an educator, as an entrepreneur, as a education entrepreneur, right? How is wearing all those hats, right? How has that helped you to support, to advocate, to give resources to other parents? Like how's wearing those hats helped you and able to reach other parents?
Yeah, wearing those hats helps me reach other parents because what I found out about parents and families is that you can't come to them and tell them to do something, one, if you haven't done it already, and 2, if you're not willing to tell them the how. Like, they don't want to sit around and listen to, oh, this is what I would have done if I was in your shoes, or oh, this is what's happening, and that's the end of the conversation. Like, they really need to know I've been where you are. So when I have conversations, or when even when we first started this podcast, I was like, look, my 2-year-old, my 4-year-old in the back, they having, their own little crying session right now, but we're going to push forward. So I'm able to really give them tools to navigate while I'm also navigating. And that's the beautiful thing about family and school relationships, is that if you can find individuals that you can actually go through, different seasons and different things with, it gives you that, it opens them up to trust you more. They're more open to have conversations with you because you can come to them as a spouse of someone that's working outside the home, working a 9-to-5, and you're home with the kids. You could come to them as an educator and say, hey, I've been on the side of the table where I'm the educator that's leading the IEP meeting, and I'm at the table as a parent whose child is on an IEP. So I can really talk to you and I can have real conversations with you about what the process looks like and what you need to demand as, you know, as an educator or as a parent. I can really relate to you, and I can give you the tools that I'm using in my everyday life.
I love it. So look, so we're gonna dive into the hot fire that it
Yes.
is. And so I'm gonna share my screen again, and
Okay.
I think originally it was written for the LA School Report, right?
It was written originally for the 74.
74. Okay, so that and
Mhm.
that's the one that I'm gonna put up on the screen here. So this is
Okay.
it right here, right? So both see it, right? An educator's view after a year of disrupting learning. 7 things Black parents can do to make sure their child will thrive in school, and that's the essence of the show. So before we get into those 7 things,
Yeah.
what was the spark, right? That said, I gotta write this, or like, you know, I know as a blog writer myself, sometimes it's like that. You feel like a pastor. This sermon just comes to you, and you got to get it out, and you got to flush it out for the people. So, what was the thing that sparked you to say, I gotta get this out?
Yeah. So big ups to, so right now I'm actually a fellow with the 50K and National Voices Fellowship. So big ups to Darrell and Ned that really during my 201 was like, hey, like what's on your heart? Like, what is that one thing that's on your heart that you need to talk about that can really help families in this time? And when I thought about it, and as we were having a conversation, like initially it was 7 things that all parents can do. But then as we talked more, they were just like, you really need to narrow the focus in on African American and Black families, because they're always the topic of conversation when it comes to low achievement. Like, and that's something that is sadly that's always there. So if we're talking about how learning loss, if you want to call it that, or how learning has been disrupted, we're seeing these statistics over and over and over again about how either Black families are deciding to homeschool but they're struggling to do that, or their child is still in this public school that was already not producing results, and then COVID happened and it just tripled, and then and it was just like oh my gosh, like I don't know what's happening. My kid is now home with me, and I don't know what to do with my kid. And when I put them back into school, what do I need to do to make sure that they're thriving there?
Got you. So are these in any particular order, or like are they listed as, you know, is the first one listed there for a reason or not?
The first one was listed there.
Okay, because I thought so, and I'm gonna go to that one. So we're gonna start there. And I asked when I saw that one, because I said that one. So the first one, if folks that haven't read it, but I definitely encourage you to read it after listening to this show, is ask questions about your child's learning. Why was that one of the ones, and why do you feel like that is the first one and probably the most important one that parents should do? Ask questions about their child's learning.
Yeah. So I was super frustrated. And that's why that one is number 1. And when I go into it, it's really asking questions about their learning level. Because when schools first closed, all of the parents that had 5th grade children in school were getting a 5th grade packet. And all the families that had 3rd grade children were getting 3rd grade packets. And it frustrated me because I was getting phone calls and emails from parents, and they're just like, my kid doesn't know what's in this packet. And I'm like, they don't know what's in this packet, because just because your child is in 5th grade doesn't mean that they're reading and computing on a 5th grade level. So you really have to ask the necessary questions about what my child is learning and where my child is learning, because those are two different things, right? What my child is learning, or what my child should be learning in 5th grade, is probably across the board the same thing. But if my child is reading on the 3rd grade level, then my child should have 3rd grade reading passages and 3rd grade comprehension questions and 3rd grade math questions. They shouldn't have a 5th grade packet. So I think I know we didn't do a good job of really giving families resources that they could use. We gave them resources to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. And when I say ourselves, I'm talking education and I'm talking school systems. Like we really didn't send them things that they needed to actually thrive. We just said, hey, this is Nia. Nia's in 5th grade. Nia is 10. I'm sending Nia a 5th grade packet. Yep. So I want families as they go back into schools to make sure that they're looking at reports and having conversations about where their child is on this learning spectrum or learning trajectory.
Yeah. So when I tell folks all the time in the pandemic, when you're teaching at the grade level the students at. But when you give them independent work, it should be at what you said, that instructional level. So, and you said it in here, if I have a 3rd grader reading on the 1st grade level, when I'm teaching them 3rd grade. But when they get the work, it should be at their instructional level,
right?
Which is 1st grade, right?
Right.
But I want to read this quote in that section. It says, "If we are truly going to move Black children forward, we can't be ashamed or ignore these gaps." What did you mean by that?
I love my parents. Let me open up with that. But we can't continue to push our own children forward. Like I'm a mom of twin daughters that's going into 5th grade. But I straight up tell you, next week, July 5th, my girls are working on math because their math instruction is weaker than their reading instruction. And as a parent, I can't be ashamed to say that. And as a parent, I can't sugarcoat that. I can't say, oh no, he's gonna be fine, or oh no, they're gonna be okay. Like that's not how that works. Like we have to, as parents, take our egos out of it sometimes as well, and not feel like if they're not getting it, it's because of us, or if they're not understanding, it's because of us, and it doesn't exist. Like we can't ask schools to be accountable for our children, and we're not accountable for our children in that aspect, and we can't be ashamed to retain them. I told my daughters this year, I said, hey, if you don't get it, there's no summer school. Like you're going to just repeat this grade. And as Black parents, like we can't make that such a bad thing. Like if they need to do it again, they need to do it again. If the teacher has done everything they were supposed to do, they taught them effectively, and they just didn't get it, then they need to repeat that grade. And we can't be ashamed of that. And we can't let that be a crutch to our children being as successful as they need to be.
Listen, I got destroyed on the Twitterverse for mentioning the word retention during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
But it was to your point. It was solely like we can't be afraid to have those conversations. We can't be afraid to make those decisions. And I think a lot of people have been afraid of that. So
yeah.
So let's go to 2.
Okay.
Know what assessments your child is taking and how they are being measured.
And this is any assessment, and it's not just the state assessment. This is quizzes, tests, any type of assessment that your child is going to have in class. I think it's beneficial for us as parents to know. One, it's beneficial for us to know because if I've been super busy with life, as we always are, and you're going to have this test or this quiz on Friday, I need to know about it so that in my brain as a parent, I can say, hey, I know you're busy, but Monday and Wednesday, make sure you cover these topics so that they're ready on Friday. Or it's just, if I know a test or something is happening on Friday, then it gives me time to even, like, I like to make little affirmation cards. Like it gives me time to motivate my child. It gives me time to talk to my child. And a lot of times, my girls would do really, really good on the test when I just drew a little heart on their hand versus when they didn't have that heart on their hand. But as educators in the classroom, and we're not communicating with families when these assessments are going to take place and children don't do well, then we're both to blame. Because if I had that conversation with you earlier, maybe you wouldn't took them out to the restaurant all night and they came in dog tired and now they failed the test. So it's really just them. It's not me saying, hey, go up to Miss So-and-so and ask her to write down every date your child's going to have a test. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying have that awareness of when those things are taking place so that you put your child in a better position to really show what they know. And what are you measuring? Because if you're giving my child, and this is the thing that frustrated me about number 2. As an educator, don't ask me to assess the kid on something I didn't teach.
Mm-hmm.
And don't ask my child to take an assessment on content that you didn't cover. Because at that point in time, it's not about what my child does and does not know. It's about what you did and did not teach.
Man, so the assessments, and you said it in here, and this is what I was telling parents. So you said having information on how or if your child is mastering content is key when planning help at home or hiring a tutor. I feel like so often that parents hire a tutor with the right intention, but not the right information.
Yes.
So you know that your child needs the support, but you don't know what your child truly needs support in, and you have a tutor's like they need help in reading. Well, what specifically in reading, right? Are they below reading level? Are they struggling with comprehension? Are they struggling with fluency, right?
Right.
What is it specifically that they're struggling with so the tutor can help them? But you don't know that unless you ask those questions and you have those assessment data. But I'll even say this, and I say this to schools. You should be sending home a week at a glance, right? Maybe, I don't know if you do it Sunday night in your announcements or Monday when kids go home. But if there's a test going on that week, parents read that week at a glance and say, oh man, my child has a test on Wednesday, right? I need to make sure Tuesday night they get to bed early. Wednesday morning they eat breakfast. Wednesday morning they're getting to school on time if you don't have a bus, or make sure they get to the bus. You got to do those things too, but the school also has to do their part of providing the information. And like you said, I'm not asking for a year at a glance of testing. But what I am asking for is, hey, give parents a little notice, and then parents, hey, write that notice down and know that that test is happening, right? And going back to your point 1, we can't run away from the gaps. And the only way we're going to get to know what students' gaps are if we assess them, right? And you can assess kids periodically without over assessing them, right? And so not every assessment is bad. Not every assessment is racially motivated, right? Some of this assessments has a bad connotation because I think
it does.
But if it's used properly, if schools are using it not to label a child, but to find, to diagnose the child and to get to know what gaps they have and where they are, then I think that's the stigma that we got to change. So
and use it. Like don't. My thing is I'm trying to say this nicely. This real conversation.
Yeah, it's real. Come on, it's real.
My thing is we do a lot of assessing. We're really good at assessing. But what I didn't like as an educator is assessing all of my students, knowing where they were, and then the next day I had to do something else. Like I need time to process what I just assessed, and I need time to teach it. And we can't continue, like when we're talking about reimagining education and what we're doing next, we can't continue to have educators assess students and not give us time to actually break apart this data, put our children into small groups, like really send this information home to families, broken down in the language that they're going to understand. Like I sent so many map charts home, and I had to retype what was on that chart because I'm like, my families don't know what these dots, and like I barely, as an educator, sometimes I had to go back to the map website and read like, oh, this is what this little star means. This is what the solid dot means. And if the dot's not colored in, this is what this means. So we really have to put our families in a better position to understand the assessments that we're given. I'm not anti-assessment, but I'm saying if we're going to assess and we're going to give them the data, we have to break it down so that they can understand what they're looking at so they can help their child.
Listen, I may not be anti-assessment, but I'm anti the way people use some of these assessments, right? Like, and to your point, right, we're just not using them properly. And, this is free advice from the Recess podcast, but you assess a child, you do the data analysis, right? You put in the interventions, you progress monitor, and then you reassess to see if those interventions work. That's like that. That's the structure. That takes time also. That takes time. That takes diligence. It takes dedication. It takes a strong school culture centered around data-driven instruction. It takes a competent leader to coach a teacher who may not be as competent yet, and it takes a committed teacher, right? And notice in there, I didn't mention a student or a parent. That's a school's job to create that culture and to make sure they're doing those things. So again, you assess the child, you analyze the data, you reteach it, right? You put in the interventions, you progress monitor, and you reassess if it works. Like it's really, that's the process. That's free advice on the Recess podcast in season 3.
That's the formula, right?
That's the formula, right? Here we go. So number 3, this is my favorite because like I feel like this is what schools. My professor in my doctoral program says he hates the word best practices, but this is a best practice for a school, for a school and a parent. Request weekly updates and progress on your child. And I think if I could offer a caveat, the word weekly should be like all caps and bolded. Because typically the only time the parents ask about progress is parent-teacher conferences. And most time parent-teacher conferences is every quarter, which in some cases is 9 weeks. So when you said request weekly updates and progress on your child, why did you feel like that was an important one to add?
I mean, I was a little biased because I do it as a classroom teacher. So I'm just like, if I can do this for 4 kids and a husband and, you know, all that stuff going on, y'all can do it too. But for me, the weekly updates was important for me because in kindergarten, when I taught kindergarten, the way that they learned was so amazing to me that I wanted my families to know. Like I wanted them to know, hey, they learned 5 new words this week, and that's important. And when I taught 5th grade this year, it was also important for me because I got the opportunity, of course it was virtual, but I got the opportunity to let my families know, hey, this is week 3 of us doing this same thing and they're still not getting it. So let's have a conversation about why. Let's have a conversation about things that maybe you can incorporate at home, or what is it that's not working here to where they're still not getting it. But I also did, towards the end of the year, I did glows and grows. Like this, they're glowing in this area. They need to grow in this area. And something that I learned just going through undergrad is that the same amount of energy that you put into making a call when Liara is cutting up is the same amount of energy you need to put into a call when Liara is doing well.
Come on now.
So that's why I said weekly or just a progress, and it doesn't have to be deep. Like it can, I promise you, my glows and grows was so short, like a glow. Aaliyah did really well as the teacher aide this week. A grow, she needs to work on practicing her 3 multiplication facts. Bam. That's it. And my parents were in my phone, so I could text glows and grows. I could put them in the Google's Classroom stream. I could send an email. Like you just need to create a template. And what I loved about virtual learning this year is I had a Google slide for all of my kids. So literally all I got to do is share that Google slide with their family, and I could just type my glows and grows right there and I'm done. But it's really just letting families know along the way how their child is progressing, so that we don't get to the 9 weeks and they're just like, oh, why my child got a D? Why my child failing? So you know, and I've had those conversations where I was like, look, from September 9th until October 25th, I've been sending you weekly updates. So when her name wasn't called at the award ceremony, that wasn't on me. Like I let you know every week that something wasn't going well. And unfortunately, you know, not much was done with that, but at least you have that information. So I'm telling families, hey, you need to request this. And again, I'm an educator, so I'm not saying put more on educators. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just telling families that, hey, you guys are not asking for too much if you are asking us to give you what we should already be doing.
And that's what I'm about to say. That's a part of the job, right? Keeping your parents updated. And you said it, right? During the pandemic, we have seen the lack of communication increase between schools and families. I would even add a caveat. The pandemic exposed the lack of communication that schools had with families. But this last part, without communication, we set Black children up to fail.
Every time.
So number 4, and I say this all the time, parents, you are your child's first and best teacher. And so it says, share with the teacher the ways in which Your child learns best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's learning from everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just academics. I can stand in front of you and say, hey, if you want to reach Mia, you need to show her that you really love her because she's a caring, a passionate child. Mm-hmm. If you want to reach Nia, you're gonna have to be side by side with her because she's just like that. She over here. If you want to reach Liara, you're gonna have to give it to her straight up, and you're gonna have to be straight to the point because she ain't with all that talking. Yeah. And if you want to reach Princeton, you're going to have to put something in his hand for him to actually manipulate it and move it around. And I did that this year. Like I created resources of my own, and I took them to my daughter's classroom and I say, hey, she's been struggling with multiplication because she need to put it inside of a grid. She can't have her numbers all over the place. She need to actually have them inside these little boxes. And that's how she needs to multiply so that she can regroup properly. If you know that about your child, take the resources to the classroom. Like I want families to stop feeling like they can't even step inside of the school and say something. Like I want that feeling that they have, that anxiety to end. If you know your child really likes basketball or music or dancing or ballet, let the teacher know that. I've had to give that advice to my parents before, to my parents that I consult with. Your child really loves dancing. Let the teacher know that so that they can start reading articles about dancing, so they can start writing word problems about dancing, because children's eyes light up when you talk about what they're interested in.
Come on.
So if you know what your child is interested in, tell the teacher that so that now they can start tailoring some of their lessons to what your child likes.
So number 5. And listen, when I read this, there's a section in number 5 that I highlighted, and I'm gonna read that quote, and then I'm gonna read what it's about. So it says you wrote, there have been Black boys and girls who failed classes not because they lack brilliance, but because they never had an eye exam and could not see the board at the front of the room. Listen, parents, number 5, it's simple. It says, request special accommodation, evaluation, and assessments. Mm-hmm. So talk about that, and then just talk about that quote. Because listen, every educator, every teacher has had that one kid in the room that does this, right? And even when you move into the front of the room, they still squinting. So like, why that quote? Why that was number 5, and why that's important?
Yeah. So what year was it? I feel old. I can't even remember what year it was. But either way, I interned with the Children's Defense Fund. And maybe it was in 2009. And I'll never forget, there was this part of the documentary where they talked about how Black children just didn't receive proper dental hygiene, and they always had this toothache or they had a headache. And that really stopped them from learning. And that sat with me, like still it sits with me, because a lot of times we don't think about that. And even for me, I think I was in 3rd or 4th grade, maybe even going into middle school, when my mom realized I need glasses. And I probably needed glasses probably from kindergarten up until that point. But that's just something that she didn't know. And I had one kid in kindergarten, I'll never forget, that he was a Hispanic little boy, and he had the worst, like his toothaches were just like terrible. Like after lunch, he was just done because they were that bad. And I don't know if anyone had ever had a conversation with his mom and to just say, hey, like this is a problem, like this is interrupting his learning. Let's do something about it. And then for Black families, there were schools where the dental van and the vision vans would come and they would do these exams for children. But then there were instances where that wasn't happening. And a lot of times when we look at disruptive boys and disruptive Black little girls in the classroom, it's always, well, my husband told me stop saying always. Most of the time, they have attitude or they don't like my class. Jaquan can't see, ma'am. Like it has nothing. Like it has. Really
Jaquan can't see. He can't hear out of his left ear.
But it's really like, I'm laughing about it, but it's really so sad to the point where when you put those glasses on their little face and they can actually see what you've been talking about this whole time, like it's a different experience for them. And even for me, like when I don't have my glasses on or when I don't have these contacts in, like I don't even want to talk to you because
I don't
I
either.
can't see, I can't hear.
Right. I lose all senses, right? I'm the same way. Now with these contacts, I can see the world. I take these contacts out and got my glasses. I'm blind as a bat. But like you said,
Yeah.
if my contacts ain't in my eyes, that's because I'm asleep. You hear me?
And I feel so vulnerable. Like, oh, I can't see. Like, right. No, I don't.
but again, to your point, how you think Reggie is in class, or how you think Jasmine is sitting in there squinting, trying to see, and you're like, why ain't nothing on your paper? Because I can't see the board. That's why ain't nothing on my paper. But again, some of that, right? Schools, when you know you have students, right? Schools can get those resources, right? You can get quick free eye exams, right? You can get, dental programs, what a hearing test. Sometimes kids can't hear either, like and you just need to know those things. But again, to your point, parents got to do that advocating,
right? And they don't understand too. And one thing you have to understand is I'm tapping into my phonics kindergarten side. But if I can't hear well, I'm not going to be a good reader.
No, because I can't decode.
Because I can't. Right.
And I don't hear the sound, right? So when we did letter, I don't know the TH makes right? Because I can't hear the
because I can't hear it. Yeah.
Or when you talk about accommodations, right? The speech, if I can't make right, and I can't say that or thick, right? If speech is off, then I can't enunciate those words. So when I do take these assessments like Dibbles, and it's going to ding me because I didn't say it properly. It's not because there's a speech impediment or there's a speech path there that needs to get services. And that's why you got to get kids. I feel like, listen, you test all kids in kindergarten for speech. Like just do it real quick to just see if there's something there so you can catch it before they get to 3rd and 4th grade and it really becomes a problem. So
absolutely.
So we're at number 6. Understand that math instruction is just as important as reading instruction. So that should have
been number 1. Man, 1.5.
Shout out to the math teachers out there. I taught ELA, but my co-host on the Engaged podcast, man, Dr. Vashawn Smith, he's a math teacher. He's a math guy. He would love this one. So why do parents need to understand the importance of math just as they do reading?
Because math is key. And we talk about STEM and we talk about STEAM, but the M is mathematics.
Mathematics.
Right? And we focus a lot on the arts part when we talk about STEM or when we talk about STEAM. But one point that I was making to a parent is that technology really is all about these different algorithms that are being put together, about the different codes. And if you don't understand mathematics, if you are not mathematically savvy in certain areas, you're not going to be in a position to where you can be in engineering, right? Because that's a lot of what you're going to be working on. And even in the state of South Carolina, like we have so many reading resources. Like I can get Scholastic's books, workbooks, all different types of things. But when it comes to math, it's always that subject. It's almost like, and if you're an educator, you know this analogy, but it's almost becoming like a social studies. Like no disrespect to social studies teachers, but in elementary school, like we know reading is like you can get a coach, you can get a mentor, you can get work, you can get so many different resources. But when it comes to math, like even when we do state assessments, they give them a 7-page document for reading. And for math, they get 1. And I'm just like, we're going to have kids at the drive-thru reading the menus. They ain't going to know how to give you $5.73. Not only are they not going to be able to know how to give it to you, but the person at rest is not going to know how to give you change back from your $6 because they don't understand the concept of count by ones and counting by tens.
Or they're going to shortchange you and you ain't going to know it.
Shortchange you. I mean, and one thing that I did notice is that we are in this Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, Cash App, Venmo type thing where our students don't engage with coins and money as much. However, the value of it isn't changing. So you need to know how much money you are either giving or receiving. And it's really important, or math has become even more important for me because it's like we're not going to end cycles of poverty and generational curses, if you want to say, if our children don't understand money and finances. Like, that's one thing as a Black community that we really have to understand. If we're going to move forward in any direction, we have to understand, first of all, how money is made, and we got to understand how to keep our money. And how we're going to learn how to keep our money if we're not fluent in math. And it really just breaks my heart when I'm either talking to a middle schooler and they don't know their facts. I'm like, how do you, like, where have you gone to school, or what environment have you been in where someone has sat in front of you for 180 plus days and not taught you how to do 7 times 6, and now you in 6th grade?
Listen, math fluency. Math fluency is key. You need it. Yeah. So the last one, right? And it's simple. It's 3 words. Get an advocate.
Get an advocate.
Get an advocate. Mm-hmm. Why do parents? Well, listen, I know. Tell the listeners, tell folks listening, the folks that will listen to this, why parents need an advocate. Because there's some trifling schools out here. That's my reason why. Right.
Yeah, that's a good reason.
but why did you write? Why get an advocate if you're a parent?
One, because you don't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And 2, you need somebody to show up with you. Sometimes you need somebody to show up with you. Sometimes you need somebody to show up for you. And a lot of times families go into IEP meetings, for example, and it's just you at the table with 9 other people, right? Talking to you about your child and all these things, and maybe all these deficits and all these different things that's wrong with your child. And it's just you by yourself. Or it could just be you and your spouse. But you go into that meeting a lot of times already not knowing what they're talking about. So you get there and you're asked to sign all these forms, or you're asked to sign all these papers, and you really don't know the questions that you need to ask. And that's why I say that you need to get an advocate, because you need to get someone that's going to tell you, hey, you have the right to actually initiate an IEP meeting. Like, some families don't even know that. Like, if you think that something is wrong, like, you have the right to write a letter and say, hey, I need an initial meeting for IEP because I feel like my child needs extra resources. Or if something is going wrong in the classroom, like, you need to know that you have the right. And a lot of times advocates are going to be that person that not only, and I don't want to say speak for, because I hate to take power away from families, but speak with you or guide you. And that can be behind closed doors. Like, there are many emails that I've sent to families, and I'm just like, put your name on this and say that you wrote it. Like, I wrote it, but put your name on it and say that you wrote it, because a lot of times you don't know, what you want to say and you know what your child needs, but you don't know the language to use. So as soon as you use certain language, a lot of times schools respond. And when you use certain language, teachers respond, because they're just like, this parent know what they're talking about.
They know
what
they talk. Yeah.
Right. So that's what that advocate is there for. That advocate is there to show you that you already have the power, but let me help you in using that power.
Man, listen. So there we have it. So folks, if you missed it, we got the first one. Ask questions about your child's learning level. Know what assessments your child is taking and how they're being measured. Request weekly updates and progress on your child. Share with the teacher the ways in which your child learns best. Request special accommodation, evaluation, and assessments. Understand mathematic instruction is just as important as reading instruction. And get an advocate. So when you think about all that, right? And as we close out the show, what final advice would you give the families, right? Give the parents. So what your final thought for tonight? Like, what final advice would you give the parents in the work that you're doing for them? Yeah.
So 2 parts. And I always, after I talk about all this teaching and learning, people are really surprised when I say this. But let your kid be a kid. Right? So in all of my advice, I always want them to still be kids. And what I mean by that is let them be on YouTube, let them be on TikTok, let them watch people eating quietly but talking loud at the same time. I still I still don't understand what the infatuation is with that. But let them do that more than your shoving, I would say, academics and all those other things down their throat. And I say that because our children are very into their own little worlds. Like, just for example, even with my own daughters, like, I'm going to let you watch YouTube and I'm going to let you watch TikTok and those different things. But I'm also going to pull you to the side for about 45 minutes to an hour so that you can do academic things. But I don't want us to feel as families and as parents that we have to be school, because you don't have to be school and you don't have to have them sit and do something for 6 to 8 hours at home. But they at least need that exposure. That's what I will say. They need to be exposed to learning. They need to be exposed to mathematics. They need to be in environments that have books in them, even in your home. So I'm not asking families to do one more thing. I'm just asking you guys to be intentional about what your child is learning and doing while they're still being a kid. Because I don't want us to feel like, oh, I watched this episode, I heard what she said, and I got to drop everything and I got to add one more thing to my plate. No, if you're going to a grocery store, have them look through, and if they're younger, have them circle all the fives while you walk around the store. If they're older, tell them, hey, when we drive in the car, when we get on the bus, however you do your transportation, take this book and you're going to read 5 pages by the time we get to where we're going. So I don't want it to be one more thing for us, but I want us to do something, right? I don't want us to do nothing at all. I want us to be accountable for what our children learn. And it's not just academics. Let them cook with you. Let them dance with you. Let them shop with you. I let my girls swipe my debit card when I go, and I let them know, hey, we can use this debit card because there's money in the bank. Like that. Yep. Like, just helping them to connect what we're doing and not live in isolation with our children. We actually invite them into our world.
Learning doesn't have to only take place at the school.
Right.
Learning can be at the house, it can be at the car, it can be at the grocery store, it can be at the church, it can be wherever you want to make learning happen for your child. So I love that. Listen, I appreciate it. I officially have my South Carolina stamp. I'm in there. I got it. I appreciate it. Folks, your backstory. We had tried to get something good season 2. It didn't happen. I was like, nope. The kickoff season 3. I got to bring you on. So I put it up there and I put it at the bottom again and scrolling. But for folks that listen to this later, where can they find you? Social media wise, website, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So on social media, you see the at the bottom, my Twitter handle. Instagram is also the same, fun_of_learning. I'm on Facebook, Fundamentals of Learning. And actually, if you visit my website, which is isisspann.com, you can click and go to those social media pages. I have a YouTube channel, of course, like I stated before. And I'm going to get back on my TikTok.
There you go. Whoa. Whoa.
I'm going to get some more videos up and popping on my TikTok, maybe going into the new school year. So yeah, on all social media platforms, you guys feel free to follow me, DM, email, if you need anything. Oh, my email is actually info@Isis Spann. If you have questions, pre-K through 5th grade families, of course, reach out to me. Let me know.
Absolutely. Again, thank you again for coming on with me. Peace and blessings to you and your family and through this time. And so as everybody, again, I appreciate those rocking with us live. Those that will listen to this later, again, I'm back for season 3, like MJ. And as I always say with every show, create the platform, control the conversation, change the culture. Y'all hear me next week. You won't see me. Next week's episode is going to be a pre-recorded episode. I'm going to be solo again, but make sure you tune in. It's going to be live again on the Recess Podcast YouTube page, the Recess Podcast Twitter page. It'll be episode 43, but you'll have to listen to it. You trust me, you're going to want to hear my 30-minute rant that I have for what I call for the black male educators out there, man. We got to do better. So make sure you listen to that next week. And again, this has been a Recess Podcast for another real conversation. Peace out, everybody.